My name's Ryan Hurst. I'm the CEO of Peculiar Ventures. Spent the last 30 years working at companies like Google and Microsoft, as well as a number of smaller companies. But most of my career has been spent on authentication systems and cryptography, a lot of which has been focused on certificates, which we're here to talk about today. So, when looking at why conversations are happening about shortening certificate validity periods, I think it's important to start at the very beginning. When the Web PKI was created, there were really no technical requirements for certificate authorities. CAs could have made certificates that had as long certificate validities as they wanted to, and frankly, some CAs did. As the Web PKI grew and the number of CAs grew, the practices varied quite a lot, which led the browsers to start establishing technical requirements for what does it mean to be a trusted CA within their root program. From there, the idea of having CAs audited became desirable, and that led to the adoption of Web Trust for CAs, which ultimately led to the creation of the CA browser forum, where requirements that might get incorporated into that audit regime would be discussed. And since that very beginning of the CA browser forum, where requirements were established for lots of elements of CA operation, including certificate validity, the journey from having very long-lived certificates to having short-lived certificates began. If we look at the changes that have taken place, we've gone from 10 years to 5 years to 3 years to 2 years and now 1 year. This current phase of conversations about shortening certificate validity is being driven by aligning the requirements with what has become the actual norm. Today, the majority of certificates are 90 days or less, which means it is a good time to start talking about should we align the requirements with what industry best practices are. A common question that I hear when I talk to customers about certificate validity is, will this impact the certificates that I issue internal to my organization? And the answer to that is broadly no. Rules that are enforced by the browsers are only relevant to certificates that are issued by CAs that are trusted by browsers. This means that if you push out a certificate authority as trusted, for example, group policy, it should not be impacted by future certificate validity reductions because it's you who are deciding to trust the certificate authority. If you issue the certificate using a private CA, that again is being trusted because of your internal infrastructure, not because of the fact that the browsers have made the trust decision. It's unlikely that any changes to certificate validity will impact certificates that are issued for internal usage, unless you happen to be using public certs for those use cases. When will we see shorter certificate validity periods? Right now, there is a forward-looking statement from Google that talks about how they would like to see maximum certificate validity periods shortened to match what's today's common practice, and that's 90 days. It seems likely to me that in the next year, we will see a proposal actually go up for vote to shorten certificate validity periods. And I bet that that will be to 90 days in accordance with Google's sort of forward-looking statement about where the web is going. If that happens in the next year, I would expect it to vote and likely pass because it does align with what is the most common practice today for certificates. I would also expect there to be a 1 year implementation period after that vote takes place for CAs and organizations that rely on TLS certificates to adjust their practices. So we could say, let's say over the next 24 months, that would likely become a reality. Through experience, what I can say is if a vote happens this year and it passes, we would see a effective date of roughly 1 year later. We know that from past changes. This 1 year implementation period is intended to give certificate authorities an opportunity to work with their customers to message that this change is coming and give their customers an opportunity to deploy whatever changes they may need to within their organization to be able to support a change. So I would say if it goes to vote this year and passes, maybe 1 year later, we would see a change being enforced. It's useful to understand how decisions are made inside of the web PKI. The first thing is browsers are the ones that decide which certificate authorities are trusted. They establish technical requirements, audit requirements, and general policy requirements for inclusion into the root program. One of those requirements happens to be that you have a web trust audit. Web trust audits are at least partially derived from the documents that are produced by the CA Browser Forum. And normally, certificate validity decisions are made in the context of the CA Browser Forum documents. So while it's likely that the decision to enforce shortening the certificate validity period of certs will happen inside the CA Browser Forum, it does not strictly have to be. There are certainly cases where technical requirements that failed to pass in the CA Browser Forum were enforced by browsers directly. But normally, these things do happen within the confines of the process of the CA Browser Forum. I like to think that organizations should look at this as an opportunity. This is going to help improve the security posture of your organization. It's going to free up resources ultimately that have been spent on manual processes, and allow you to apply them to more strategic initiatives that will provide the organization more value than rotating certificates manually, and in general, make you more agile and resilient to changes in the future.